The tea had gone cold hours ago, but Vel kept sipping it anyway. His 4 eyes tracked the screen displays that covered every wall of the control room. 23 years he had worked at this deep space station, watching empty space for signs of trouble. Most days brought nothing more exciting than a merchant ship taking the long route home or a small asteroid drifting off course. Today felt different. The first warning came from the deep-range sensors, a blip so faint that rookie operators would have dismissed it as cosmic background noise. But Vel had learned to trust his instincts. Something was out there, moving through hyperspace at speeds that made no sense. "Nix, take a look at Sector 7, Vel called to his science officer. The tall, pale alien floated over from his workstation, his tentacles dancing across the control surfaces with practiced ease. "That energy signature is wrong," Nix said, after studying the readings for several minutes. "The mass displacement reading suggests something enormous, but the acceleration curves are impossible. Nothing that large should move that fast." Vel felt his stomach tighten. In his decades of service, impossible usually meant dangerous. He activated the station-wide alert and began recording everything. Whatever was coming their way, the Galactic Council would want detailed records. The hours crawled by as the unknown contact drew closer. More sensors came online, each one adding to the growing picture of something that defied every law of space. Travel they understood. The object was huge beyond anything in their databases. It moved with purpose and precision that spoke of advanced technology, and it was heading straight for the Proxima system. "Commander," called out Terra from the communications station. Her voice carried the nervous edge that came from years of translating alien languages. "I'm picking up structured signals from the contact. It's broadcasting something, but the patterns don't match any known species." Vel moved to her station and studied the waveforms. The signals were complex, layered with mathematical precision that suggested high intelligence, but the fundamental structure was unlike anything the Council had encountered. A new species traveling in something that redefined their understanding of what was possible in space. "How long until it reaches the system?" Vel asked. Nix's tentacles worked furiously across his calculations. "At current velocity, approximately 6 hours. But, Commander, if it maintains this speed while dropping out of hyperspace..." He didn't need to finish. Vel understood. Most ships had to slow down significantly before leaving hyperspace, or they would tear themselves apart from the dimensional stress. Whatever was approaching either had incredible structural integrity or was willing to take risks that bordered on suicidal. The next few hours passed in tense preparation. Vel sent coded messages to Council headquarters, requesting emergency protocols and backup. The response came quickly: observe and report, but do not engage. The nearest Council fleet was 3 days away. If this unknown contact proved hostile, the monitoring station would be on its own. As the mysterious object prepared to drop out of hyperspace, every sensor on the station focused on the emergence point. Vel had witnessed hundreds of ships transition, from hyperspace to normal space. It was usually a brief flash of exotic energy as the vessel slipped between dimensions. This was nothing like that. The first sign was the electromagnetic pulse that temporarily blinded half their sensors. Then came the gravity waves, ripples in space-time so powerful they triggered emergency alarms throughout the station. The station's artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, sending loose objects floating through the air. When their sensors finally cleared and refocused, Vel felt his breath catch in his throat. The thing that had emerged from hyperspace was not a ship. It was a mobile fortress, a construct so massive that it seemed to bend space around itself. 8 kilometers of dark metal and angular surfaces, bristling with weapon emplacements that could reduce planets to ash. "By the stars," Nix whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of alarms. "The energy readings are off our scales. That thing has more firepower than our entire home fleet." Vel stared at the display, trying to process what he was seeing. The vessel hung in space like a sleeping giant, its hull reflecting starlight, in ways that suggested armor plating thicker than most ships were long. Strange geometric patterns covered its surface, and every few seconds, lights pulsed along its length in synchronized waves. "Commander," Tara called out, her voice tight with fear. "It's scanning us. Multiple sensor sweeps, full spectrum analysis. They're learning everything about our station, our technology, our defensive capabilities." The realization hit Vel like a physical blow. This was not a peaceful exploration vessel. This was a warship designed for one purpose: the complete destruction of anything that opposed it. And it had just appeared in Council space without warning or invitation. "Open a channel," Vel ordered. "All frequencies, all languages. If they want to talk, we need to establish communication before they decide we're a threat." The response came almost immediately. The alien signals resolved into clear mathematical patterns, then shifted into basic galactic standard. The voice that emerged from their speakers was calm, professional, and utterly terrifying in its quiet confidence. "This is the Earth vessel Leviathan. We represent the human species and seek peaceful contact with local governing authorities. Please identify yourselves and direct us to appropriate diplomatic channels." Earth. Human. Two words that meant nothing to anyone in the station's database. A completely unknown species that had just announced their presence with a display of military power that redefined the very concept of space warfare. Vel realized his hands were shaking as he reached for the communication controls. First contact. Protocols demanded careful, measured responses, but those protocols had been written with the assumption that new species would arrive in exploration vessels, not dreadnoughts that could crack moons in half. "Unknown vessel, this is Monitoring Station Sentinel's Eye of the Galactic Council," Vel replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. "We welcome peaceful contact and will relay your request to appropriate authorities. Please maintain current position while diplomatic protocols are established." There was a pause before the human voice responded. "Acknowledged. We will hold position and await contact from your diplomatic representatives. Be advised that additional human vessels may arrive to support this mission. We hope this will be the beginning of positive relations between our species." Additional vessels. The words sent ice through Vel's veins. If this monster was just the first of many, then everything was about to change. The balance of power that had kept the galaxy stable for centuries was about to be shattered by a species that treated 8-kilometer warships as diplomatic escorts. Vel began composing his emergency report to the Council, knowing that within hours, every government in the galaxy would be scrambling to understand what humanity was and what they wanted. The age of human contact had begun, announced by the arrival of something that made every other military force in known space look like children playing with toys. The monitoring station continued its watch, but now they were no longer observing empty space. They were witnessing the moment when humanity stepped onto the galactic stage, armed with weapons that could remake the political landscape of the entire galaxy. The coffee maker in the ready room had been broken for 3 weeks, but Ryan still went through the motions of checking it every morning. Routine kept the mind sharp during long deployments, even when that deployment involved humanity's first contact with alien civilizations. Through the reinforced windows of his quarters, Ryan could see the alien monitoring station in the distance, a small, elegant structure that looked more like a research facility than a military installation. Intelligence reports suggested it housed maybe 50 beings from various species, all dedicated to watching empty space for signs of trouble. They had certainly found it. Ryan pulled up the psychological warfare briefing on his personal tablet. The document was thick with analysis from Earth's best xenopsychologists, though all of their theories were built on speculation and intercepted communications. The basic principle was sound: establish dominance through demonstration of superior capability, then negotiate from a position of unquestioned strength. The Leviathan had been designed specifically for this mission. Every aspect of its construction was calculated to send a message. The angular hull design suggested predatory efficiency. The weapon placement was deliberately obvious, impossible to mistake for anything other than instruments of destruction. Even the ship's electromagnetic signature had been tuned to trigger fear responses in most known alien neural structures. "Sir, we're receiving the alien delegation's response," Lieutenant Murphy reported from the bridge. "They're requesting a formal meeting to establish diplomatic protocols." Ryan nodded and made his way to the bridge. The massive command center buzzed with quiet activity as his crew monitored every aspect of the first contact scenario. Banks of screens displayed tactical information, communication intercepts, and psychological analysis of the alien responses they'd received so far. "What's our read on their emotional state?" Ryan asked. Commander Stone, his intelligence officer, consulted her reports. "Fear, confusion, and desperate curiosity. Their communications are filled with references to our weapons capacity and ship size. They're treating us as a potential threat rather than potential allies." Perfect. Fear bred caution, and caution led to respect. The aliens were already thinking defensively, which meant they would approach negotiations looking for ways to avoid conflict rather than ways to exploit perceived weaknesses. "Sir," called Ensign Davis from communications, "the alien delegation is requesting permission to approach and dock. They're asking about our defensive protocols and whether we consider their approach a potential threat." Ryan almost smiled. The aliens were so focused on not provoking humanity that they were asking permission to conduct standard diplomatic procedures. The psychological impact was working even better than the analyst had predicted. Grant permission for approach, but "make sure they understand our security requirements," Ryan ordered. "Full escort by our fighters, predetermined flight path, and complete sensor sweeps of their vessel." The next few hours passed in careful choreography as the alien delegation approached. Their ship was sleek and aesthetically pleasing, clearly built by a civilization that valued form as much as function. It was also completely outclassed by human technology in every measurable category. Ryan watched the docking procedure from the observation deck. The alien vessel looked like a luxury yacht next to the Leviathan's brutal military architecture. When the docking clamps engaged, he could see alien faces through the small windows of their ship. They were staring at the human vessel with expressions that needed no translation, awe mixed with terror. The delegation that came aboard was diverse, representing multiple species with different physical characteristics. Their leader was a tall, pale being with multiple arms and large, intelligent eyes. Behind him came representatives from what appeared to be several different evolutionary paths: insectoid creatures, mammalian species, and something that looked like a cross between a plant and an octopus. "Welcome aboard the Leviathan," Ryan said, using the translation system they'd developed from intercepted communications. "I am Captain Ryan, representing the human species and the government of Earth." The alien leader stepped forward with movements that suggested both respect and deep nervousness. "I am Ambassador Kate of the Galactic Council. We welcome humanity's contact and hope to establish peaceful relations between our civilizations." The formal pleasantries continued as Ryan led the delegation through carefully selected sections of the ship. Every corridor they walked through had been chosen to demonstrate human military capability. They passed weapons lockers, tactical planning, rooms, and engineering sections that hummed with barely contained power. The aliens tried to hide their reactions, but their body language told the story. Every new display of human technology produced subtle signs of growing concern. When they passed the launch bay, where fighter craft hung ready for immediate deployment, one of the insectoid delegates made a sound that the translation system identified as deep distress. In the main conference room, Ryan activated a holographic display of the local star system. "Human policy requires us to understand the political and military structure of any region where our ships operate. Please provide information about local governments, territorial boundaries, and military capabilities." The request was phrased politely, but the implication was clear. Humanity was not asking permission to be here. They were establishing their presence and demanding information about potential obstacles to their operations. Ambassador Kate exchanged glances with her fellow delegates before responding. The Galactic Council maintains peacekeeping operations throughout this region. We have mutual defense agreements with most local species and coordinate trade and diplomatic relations. Peacekeeping operations, Ryan repeated. What kind of threats require such operations? The question opened a floodgate of information about piracy, territorial disputes, and occasional conflicts between expansionist species. As Kate described the Council's challenges in maintaining order, Ryan realized that humanity had stumbled into a power vacuum. The galaxy was fractured into hundreds of small governments, none strong enough to truly control their neighbors. The Council served as mediators and peacekeepers, but their authority depended on voluntary cooperation rather than overwhelming force. It was a system held together by consensus and mutual benefit rather than fear or respect. How many ships does the Council maintain for these peacekeeping operations? Ryan asked. Approximately 3,000 vessels across 47 fleets, Kate replied. Though most are patrol craft and support vessels rather than dedicated warships, Ryan nodded thoughtfully. Human intelligence had estimated the Council's military capacity at roughly that level. What the aliens didn't know was that Earth had already constructed over 200 ships of the Leviathan's class, with production rates that would double that number within 2 years. We appreciate the information, Ryan said. Humanity seeks peaceful coexistence with all sentient species. However, we will not tolerate aggression against human interests or interference with our operations. We hope the Council can help ensure that other species understand this position. The message was delivered in diplomatic language, but its meaning was unmistakable. Humanity was establishing itself as a major power in the region, and any opposition would be dealt with decisively. As the meeting concluded, Ryan could see that the alien delegation was eager to return to their ship and report to their superiors. They had come hoping to evaluate humanity's capabilities and intentions. Instead, they were leaving with the knowledge that a new apex predator had entered galactic politics. After the aliens departed, Commander Stone approached with the psychological analysis. Their stress indicators were off the charts by the end of the meeting. I think we achieved the desired effect. Ryan watched the alien vessel accelerate away from the Leviathan, no doubt carrying news that would reshape how the galaxy viewed its own future. Phase 1 of First Contact was complete. Humanity had announced its presence not as supplicants seeking acceptance, but as a dominant force that expected accommodation. The real negotiations would begin soon, but they would be conducted with all parties understanding exactly where humanity stood in the new galactic hierarchy. The medical scanner showed Kate's stress levels were dangerously high, but she ignored the warning. Sleep had become impossible since the first reports arrived from the monitoring station. In 72 hours, the Galactic Council had received more intelligence reports than they typically processed in a month, all focused on a single terrifying question. What exactly were these humans capable of? Kate stood in the observation lounge of the Harmonious Dawn, watching the human vessel grow larger on the approach screens. Even at a distance of 50 kilometers, the alien warship filled their displays with menacing bulk. The ship's designers had clearly prioritized intimidation over aesthetics. Every line and angle suggested violence held in check. Ambassador, General Torn approached from behind, his heavy footsteps announcing his presence. The old warrior looked tired, his usually perfect military posture showing signs of strain. Our tactical analysis is complete. The results are not encouraging. Kate turned from the display. How bad? Torn activated a holographic projector that showed a detailed scan of the human vessel. Their armor plating is thicker than our ship's entire hull. The energy signatures we're detecting suggest weapon systems with yields measured in the hundreds of teratons. Their defensive capabilities alone exceed anything in our current military doctrine. The numbers were staggering. Kate had hoped the initial reports were exaggerated, colored by fear and unfamiliarity with alien technology. But close-range scans confirmed the worst estimates. This single human vessel possessed enough firepower to fight an entire council fleet. "What about their technology base?" Kate asked. "Any weaknesses we can identify?" Torn shook his head grimly. "Their engineering principles are completely different from ours. We build for efficiency and elegance. They build for maximum destructive output. Their power systems are massive, their redundancies are extensive, and their weapons placement suggests they expect to fight multiple opponents simultaneously." Dr. Finn, the delegation's xenopsychology expert, joined the conversation. Her normally calm demeanor showed cracks of deep concern. "I've been analyzing their communication patterns and ship design philosophy. Everything suggests a species that has extensive experience with warfare. Not just conflict, but existential warfare where survival depends on total victory." Kate felt a chill run through her body. The Council maintained peace through diplomacy, trade incentives, and the occasional show of force. But they had never encountered a species that seemed to approach interstellar relations as an extension of military strategy. "How are the other delegates handling this?" Kate asked. Dr. Finn consulted her psychological profiles. "Counselor Rex is trying to project confidence, but his biomarkers show he's more frightened than he's ever been. The hegemony representatives are discussing immediate withdrawal from the region. Only Ambassador Wells from the Trade Federation seems genuinely curious about potential opportunities." That made sense. Rex represented the Draknari Empire, a militaristic society that prided itself on strength and conquest. If the humans had managed to intimidate him, their psychological warfare was working perfectly. The hegemony species were naturally cautious, preferring to avoid conflict whenever possible. Wells, on the other hand, saw profit potential in every situation. The harmonious Dawn shuddered slightly as they entered the human ship's defensive perimeter. Automated systems on the alien vessel were scanning them with such intensity that their own sensors registered the energy beams as potential weapon locks. The humans were examining every bolt and circuit on their ship with ruthless efficiency. "Incoming communication," announced Lieutenant Yates from the bridge. "The humans are providing docking instructions and security protocols." Kate reviewed the protocols on her tablet. The requirements were extensive and non-negotiable. Complete surrender of all weapons, submission to full-body scanning, acceptance of armed human escorts throughout the visit, and agreement to real-time monitoring of all communications. The humans were treating this diplomatic meeting like a prisoner exchange. As they approached the docking bay, the scale of the human vessel became truly apparent. Their entire ship could fit inside the hangar with room for several similar vessels. The bay itself was clearly designed for military operations, with weapons emplacements covering every angle and armor blast shields that could seal the space in seconds. The humans who met them at the airlock were impressive in their calm professionalism. They wore uniforms that managed to look both formal and functional, with equipment belts that spoke of military preparedness. Their leader was a woman of middle years with intelligent eyes and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. "Welcome. Aboard the Leviathan," she said, her voice carrying easily through the translation system. "I am Admiral Brooks, representing Earth's diplomatic and military interests. We appreciate the Council's prompt response to our contact request." Kate stepped forward, fighting to keep her own nervousness from showing. "Thank you for receiving us, Admiral. The Council hopes this meeting will establish the foundation for positive relations between our civilizations." The tour that followed was clearly designed to demonstrate human capabilities. They walked through corridors lined with tactical displays, past engineering sections that hummed with barely contained energy, and through crew quarters that looked more like military barracks than living spaces. Every human they encountered was alert, professional, and obviously ready for combat at a moment's notice. In the ship's command center, Kate got her first real look at human technology in action. The bridge was a symphony of information management. with dozens of screens displaying everything from stellar navigation to weapons targeting systems. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, and Kate realized that this was not a ship on a peaceful exploration mission. This was a warship on active deployment. "Your vessel is quite impressive," General Torn commented, his military training overcoming his natural caution. "How long did it take to construct something of this magnitude?" Admiral Brooks smiled with what Kate was beginning to recognize as typical human confidence. "The Leviathan took 18 months from keel laying to launch. We have 17 more ships of this class currently in production, with plans for at least 50 more over the next 5 years. The casual mention of such massive military construction sent shockwaves through the delegation. Kate exchanged glances with her fellow ambassadors and saw her own horror reflected in their expressions. The humans were not just revealing one powerful ship, they were announcing the existence of an entire fleet of such vessels. In the main conference room, Admiral Brooks activated a holographic display of human space. The image showed star systems connected by trade routes, military patrol patterns, and defensive installations. What it revealed was not the territory of a newly spacefaring species, but the infrastructure of an established galactic power. "Humanity has been aware of galactic civilization for some time," Brooks explained. "We chose to observe and study before making contact. During that period, we established our own territorial boundaries and defensive capabilities." The implications were staggering. While the Council had been conducting business as usual, humanity had been quietly building a military infrastructure that rivaled the combined strength of the major galactic powers. They had been watching, learning, and preparing for this exact moment. "What are humanity's intentions regarding galactic politics?" Kate asked, dreading the answer. Brooks' response was measured but clear. "We seek peaceful coexistence with all species that respect human sovereignty. We are prepared to contribute to galactic stability through trade, shared technology, and mutual defense agreements. However, we will not tolerate aggression against human interests or attempts to limit our expansion into unclaimed space." The message was diplomatic in language, but military in substance. Humanity was offering partnership to those who accepted their terms and promising destruction to those who opposed them. It was the kind of ultimatum that the Council had never faced from any species. As the formal meeting continued, Kate found herself studying the humans with new understanding. They were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They were apex predators, who had learned to use diplomacy as another weapon in their arsenal. They offered cooperation, but from a position of such overwhelming strength that refusal would be suicidal. The delegation's return journey to the Harmonious Dawn was conducted in tense silence. Each member was processing what they had learned and considering the implications for their own species and governments. The galaxy that they had known, with its careful balance of power and diplomatic negotiations, was about to be transformed by the arrival of a species that treated military superiority as a prerequisite for peaceful relations. Kate began composing her report to the Council as their ship accelerated away from the human fleet. She would need to find words to describe the shift in galactic politics that had just occurred and somehow convince dozens of different species to accept a new reality where humanity held all the advantages. The age of human dominance had begun, announced not with conquest, but with the simple demonstration that resistance would be futile. Rex had built his career on intimidation, and today he intended to use every tool in his arsenal. The Draknari Empire had dominated 3 star systems through strategic displays of force, and he saw no reason why these humans should be treated any differently. Their ship was impressive, certainly, but Rex had learned that most species backed down when challenged directly. The negotiations had been proceeding with typical diplomatic caution until Rex decided to accelerate the process. The humans claimed overwhelming military superiority, but claims were easy to make. Rex wanted proof, and he was confident that once these newcomers were forced to reveal their actual capabilities, reasonable terms could be negotiated. "Admiral Brooks," Rex interrupted the current speaker, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "The Draknari Empire appreciates humanity's claims regarding your defensive capabilities. However, claims and reality are often different things. Perhaps you would be willing to provide a demonstration of your actual military capacity." The request hung in the air like a challenge. Rex could feel the other delegates' attention focusing on him, some with approval, and others with barely concealed horror. Ambassador Kate looked particularly distressed, but Rex dismissed her concerns. Diplomacy required understanding the true balance of power, and that understanding came through testing boundaries. Admiral Brooks studied Rex for a long moment, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a dangerous calm that sent warning signals through Rex's predator instincts. "You wish to see a demonstration of human military technology?" "If you're willing to provide one," Rex replied, projecting confidence he was beginning not to feel. "The Council needs to understand the actual scope of your capabilities before we can properly assess our relationship." Brooks nodded slowly, then activated her communication device. "Captain Ryan, please prepare a firing solution for demonstration purposes. Target the asteroid designated Delta 7, approximately 40,000 kilometers off our starboard bow." Rex felt his first flutter of genuine concern as he realized the humans were actually going to comply with his request. Most species would have found excuses or suggested alternative ways to demonstrate their technology. The fact that the humans were immediately preparing for live fire suggested either supreme confidence or complete recklessness. Through the conference room's reinforced windows, Rex could see the target asteroid in the distance. It was a substantial chunk of rock and metal, roughly the size of a small city. The kind of obstacle that would require sustained bombardment from multiple ships to completely destroy. "Before we proceed," Brooks said casually, "I should mention that this will be a demonstration of our standard ship-to-ship combat systems. Our planetary bombardment weapons are significantly more powerful, but we save those for more serious threats." The casual mention of even more destructive weapons sent ice through Rex's veins. He was beginning to realize that his challenge might have been a serious miscalculation, but pride prevented him from backing down now. The Leviathan's main gun array began to track toward the target asteroid. Rex watched the weapon systems align with growing unease. The barrel assemblies were massive, clearly designed to channel enormous amounts of energy. Warning lights activated throughout the ship as the crew prepared for weapons discharge. "Firing. Solution locked," came a voice over the communication system. "All systems ready for demonstration." Brooks looked directly at Rex. "Last chance to reconsider. Once we fire, there's no taking it back." Rex straightened his shoulders and met her gaze. "Proceed with your demonstration." What happened next redefined Rex's understanding of destructive capability. The Leviathan's main particle beam array discharged with a sound that seemed to come from the ship's very bones. Energy readings on the delegation's sensors went completely off scale as coherent streams of annihilation reached out. Across space, the asteroid didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment, there was a substantial chunk of rock and metal floating in space. The next moment, there was nothing but expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The energy discharge was visible from their current position, a brief star that outshone the local sun. Rex stared at the empty space where the asteroid had been, his mind struggling to process what he had witnessed. The Draknari Empire's most powerful weapons would have taken hours to achieve that level of destruction, and they would have required multiple ships working in coordination, but the humans weren't finished with their demonstration. "Contact," announced Lieutenant Murphy from the bridge. "3 vessels decloaking at bearing 27 Mark 6. Through the windows, Rex watched as 3 more ships materialized from apparent nothingness. Each vessel was unique in design, but similar in scale to the Leviathan. The humans had been hiding an entire battle group in the shadow of a nearby asteroid field, and Rex had never suspected their presence. The Titan-class vessels Behemoth, Colossus, and Dreadnought, Brooks announced with casual pride. Each equipped with the same weapon systems you just observed. They've been providing overwatch for this diplomatic meeting since we arrived in the system. Rex felt something he hadn't experienced since childhood. Absolute terror. Not fear of death or defeat, but the existential horror that came from realizing that everything he thought he understood about galactic power structures was completely wrong. The 4 human warships hung in space like sleeping gods of destruction. Each one represented more firepower than most species possessed in their entire military forces. And according to Admiral Brooks, these were just a small sample of humanity's growing fleet. "I trust this answers your questions about our capabilities," Brooks said, her tone remaining professionally neutral despite the obvious satisfaction in her eyes. "The human approach to diplomacy is simple. We prefer peaceful solutions, but we prepare for every alternative." Rex tried to speak but found his voice had abandoned him. The other delegates were equally stunned, their various species' expressions of shock and fear creating a symphony of terror that needed no translation. Dr. Finn was the first to recover her voice. "Admiral, surely weapons of this magnitude must be reserved for the most extreme circumstances. The energy requirements alone must be enormous." Brooks smiled, and for the first time, Rex understood why the expression looked so predatory on human features. "Actually, Doctor, what you just witnessed represents about 12% of the Leviathan's maximum output. We chose a relatively modest demonstration to avoid damaging any nearby shipping lanes." 12%. Rex's legs nearly gave out as the implications hit him. The casual destruction of a city-sized asteroid had been accomplished with what the humans considered a light tap. Their actual combat capabilities were almost beyond comprehension. Ambassador Wells, the Trade Federation representative, was frantically taking notes. "Admiral, the economic implications of such technology are staggering. The energy generation systems required for weapons of this scale would revolutionize industrial production across the galaxy." "That's certainly one of the benefits we hope to share with friendly civilizations," Brooks replied. "Humanity believes in mutual prosperity through technological advancement. For species that align themselves with human interests, we're prepared to offer access to fusion power, antimatter production, and advanced manufacturing techniques." The carrot and the stick, Rex realized. Destruction for those who opposed humanity. Unprecedented prosperity for those who supported them. It was a strategy that would reshape the galactic political landscape within a decade. Kate finally found her voice. "Admiral, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to assure you that we have no intention of challenging human territorial claims or threatening your species' interests. We hope this incident hasn't damaged the potential for positive relations." Rex wanted to object, to maintain some semblance of Draknari pride and authority. But the words died in his throat as he looked at the 4 human vessels dominating the local space. His empire had built its reputation on military superiority and the willingness to use overwhelming force. The humans had just demonstrated that they could treat the Draknari fleet like an annoying insect. The demonstration was requested and provided, Brooks replied diplomatically. "Humanity values honest communication over polite deception. Now that everyone understands the actual balance of power, we can proceed with negotiations based on realistic assessments rather than wishful thinking." The remainder of the meeting passed in subdued tones as the various delegates processed the new reality they faced. Rex found himself agreeing to terms that would have been unthinkable an hour earlier, his empire's territorial ambitions suddenly seeming trivial in the face of human capabilities. As the delegation prepared to return to their respective governments, Rex realized that his challenge had accomplished exactly what he'd hoped. He now understood the true scope of human power. Unfortunately, that understanding had revealed that resistance would not just be futile, but would result in the complete annihilation of anyone foolish enough to attempt it. The demonstration was over, but its effects would ripple through galactic politics for generations to come. The morning briefing report stacked on Brooks' desk told the story of a galaxy in transition. 6 months had passed since humanity announced its presence, and the ripple effects were still spreading through every corner of known space. Trade. Routes that had been contested for centuries now operated under human protection. Border disputes that had simmered for generations were being resolved through arbitration rather than warfare. Brooks picked up the latest intelligence summary from the Outer Rim territories. Pirates who had terrorized shipping lanes for decades were either surrendering to local authorities or simply disappearing when human patrol ships arrived in their operating areas. The psychological impact of the Leviathan demonstration had spread far beyond those who witnessed it directly. Lieutenant. Commander Davis knocked on the office door before entering with the daily operations report. Admiral, we have confirmation that the Hegemony Alliance has formally requested membership in the Human Defense Pact. That brings our total allied systems to 47. Brooks nodded, unsurprised by the news. The Hegemony had been among the most cautious species at first contact, but their leadership was intelligent enough to recognize which way galactic politics was trending. Membership in the Defense Pact offered protection from potential threats while requiring only minimal cooperation with human strategic objectives. Any resistance from the traditional power brokers? Brooks asked. Davis consulted his tablet. The Draknari Empire officially protests the rapid expansion of human influence, but their military advisors have quietly established communication channels with our Strategic Planning Division. Counselor Rex personally requested information about our shipbuilding capacity and defensive doctrine. The irony wasn't lost on Brooks. Rex had demanded a demonstration of human power, and now his empire was desperately trying to understand how to coexist with that power. His challenge had backfired spectacularly, transforming the Draknari from potential threats into nervous supplicants. Through her office windows, Brooks could see the construction of the new diplomatic station. The massive facility would serve as humanity's primary embassy to the Galactic Council, but its design made clear that it was as much fortress as diplomatic facility. Multiple docking bays could accommodate entire fleets, while defensive systems rivaled those of most planetary defense networks. "What's the status on the shipbuilding program?" Brooks asked. Davis smiled as he reported numbers that would have seemed impossible just 2 years earlier. 37 Titan-class vessels currently operational, with 12 more scheduled for completion within the next 4 months. The new Jupiter yards are exceeding production targets by 20%. Brooks did some quick calculations. By the HFY end of the year, humanity would have nearly 60 planet-killing warships distributed across their expanding sphere of influence. Each vessel represented more firepower than most species possessed in their entire military arsenals, and Earth's production capacity was still accelerating. The communication system chimed with an incoming priority message from Captain Ryan aboard. The Leviathan. His image appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from what appeared to be a crowded bridge engaged in active operations. "Admiral, we've just completed escort duty for a Council trade convoy through the Vega Corridor. The local pirate syndicate that's been operating in that region for the past 15 years has officially disbanded. Their leadership sent formal surrender documents to the convoy commander." Brooks wasn't surprised. Pirates were predators who relied on being stronger than their targets. When human warships began escorting trade convoys, the entire foundation of piracy collapsed overnight. No criminal organization was desperate enough to challenge vessels that could atomize entire fleets. "Any other developments in your patrol sector?" Brooks asked. Ryan checked his reports. 3 different species have requested formal meetings to discuss joining the Defense Pact. 2 mining colonies asked for permanent human protection after threats from separatist movements evaporated once word spread about our presence in the region. Oh, and the Nexus Corporation wants to discuss licensing agreements for our fusion power technology. The requests for technological sharing had become routine. Human energy production methods were centuries ahead of most galactic civilizations, and the economic advantages were too significant to ignore. Species that aligned themselves with humanity gained access to industrial capabilities that transformed their entire economic output. Approved for preliminary discussions, Brooks decided. But make sure they understand that technology sharing requires long-term political alignment. We're not interested in short-term contracts. After ending the communication with Ryan, Brooks turned her attention to the most sensitive report on her desk. Intelligence analysis of the galaxy's response to human expansion painted a picture of rapid political realignment that was both encouraging and potentially dangerous. The established powers were adapting in different ways. The Trade Federation was embracing human partnership, recognizing that economic cooperation offered more benefits than territorial competition. The various exploration guilds were actively seeking human protection for their deep space missions. Even the traditionally isolationist crystal communes had begun tentative diplomatic outreach. But not everyone was accepting the new reality peacefully. "Admiral," Davis said, consulting his secure communications device, "we're receiving reports of increased separatist activity in the Outer Rim. Intelligence suggests some species are organizing resistance movements rather than accepting human hegemony." Brooks had been expecting this development. Not every species would willingly submit to human dominance, regardless of the obvious benefits. Some cultures valued independence more than safety, and some leaders would prefer destruction to subordination. "What kind of resistance are we talking about?" Brooks asked. Davis pulled up tactical assessments on the main display. "Mostly propaganda campaigns and economic sabotage. A few species are attempting to form military alliances with the stated goal of checking human expansion. So far, nothing that represents a credible threat to our operations." Brooks studied the intelligence reports with growing concern. The resistance movements were small and poorly equipped, but they represented something potentially more dangerous than military opposition. The possibility that humanity's success might breed the kind of desperate alliance that could actually threaten human interests. "Recommendations from Strategic Command?" Brooks asked. "3 options," Davis replied. "Complete suppression through overwhelming force, negotiated settlement with resistance leadership, or demonstration of consequences through targeted examples." The third option was the most appealing from a strategic standpoint. Humanity had built its galactic position on the principle that opposition would be met with disproportionate response. A carefully chosen example of what happened to species that actively opposed human interests would likely end resistance movements before they could gain momentum. "Any species in particular that would make an appropriate example?" Brooks asked. Davis highlighted a star system on the tactical display. "The Keth hegemony has been the most vocal in organizing anti-human sentiment. They've been distributing propaganda claiming that humanity's peace is temporary and that we're planning eventual conquest of all galactic civilizations." Brooks studied the tactical information about the Keth system, a moderately advanced species with a small fleet of outdated warships attempting to play a political game they couldn't possibly win. Their leadership was either incredibly brave or catastrophically stupid. "Current human assets in that region?" "The Dreadnought is conducting patrol operations 2 systems away. The Colossus is available for deployment within 18 hours. Brooks considered her options carefully. The Keth situation required a response that was decisive enough to end resistance movements, but measured enough to avoid alienating potential allies. The galaxy needed to understand that opposition to humanity was futile, but they also needed to see that cooperation offered genuine benefits. "Order the Dreadnought to the Keth system," Brooks decided. "Full diplomatic protocols, but make sure they understand that continued resistance will have consequences. If they agree to cease anti-human activities and join the Defense Pact, we offer standard partnership benefits. If they refuse..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Davis understood the implications perfectly. The next few weeks would determine whether humanity's galactic integration continued smoothly or required more aggressive intervention. Brooks hoped for the former but was fully prepared for the latter. Her final report to Earth Command summarized the situation with characteristic directness. Galactic integration proceeding ahead of schedule. Military superiority has produced desired psychological effects across all surveyed species. Resistance movements exist, but remain manageable. Human hegemony is becoming accepted reality rather than theoretical possibility. As Brooks finished her report, she reflected on how completely the galaxy had changed in just 6 months. The careful balance of power that had defined interstellar politics for centuries had been shattered by humanity's arrival. In its place was emerging a new order built around a simple principle. Those who cooperated with humanity prospered, while those who opposed them faced extinction. The age of human dominance was no longer beginning. It had arrived, established itself, and was now consolidating its hold on galactic civilization. The Titan warships continued their patrols, silent guardians of a peace enforced not through negotiation or compromise, but through the absolute certainty that resistance was impossible. Humanity had achieved what no other species in galactic history had managed. True peace through superior firepower, backed by the wisdom to use that power sparingly but decisively. The galaxy was learning to appreciate the benefits of order, even when that order came at the barrel of weapons that could crack worlds in half.